Welcome back to the Diver Guide channel. Today we're going to go over inward 2.5 tuck, and I've done videos on inward dive and inward 1.5 already, and those are going to be prerequisites for this video. It's important that you understand all of the concepts in those videos before moving on to this one, because now we're going to expand on it on a much deeper level. At this point in your diving, you probably already have good connections, you're going to have good balance on the board, and you're definitely going to have good timing, but everything has to go to another level, and that's what we're going to talk about today. First, I want to talk about the evolution of the balance on your takeoff and what to look for in your videos to make sure that you're doing it right and getting better over time. When I talk about balance on the takeoffs, a lot of what that really comes down to is that your ankles, hips, and shoulders are in alignment. That doesn't mean that they're always perfectly straight up and down, but you want to have good alignment for most of the takeoff, and I'll show you what that means. As you can see on somebody who's doing an inward 1.5, as they go through, they start to slide out with the hips, so the angle between their ankles, hips, and shoulders ends up being a little bit too bent. Sometimes your butt will slide back or you'll lean in too much. Sometimes your shoulders will be too far back and you'll lose your balance falling backwards off the board. There's a bunch of different ways that this can happen, and this is just one example of it. Over time, you're going to get better at that, and then you'll move on to somebody who's doing inward double, where they have a much better stack from ankles up to their shoulders, and then when they go to throw, that's when the inefficiencies start. But they have enough strength to probably make it all the way around. This person goes a little bit short. The same person made their dive better by changing the balance on the board. The difference here is that they start leaning forward a lot sooner, which kind of cuts off their board ride, but it accelerated their flip speed. There's going to be a lot of trade-offs that you'll learn about as you get better and better at diving, and this is one of them. This one is okay for a short-term fix, but really you're just trading one issue with another if you do this, because their head is down, they're lower, and they're cutting off height that they can get, which is going to stop them from being able to do inward 2.5, which is what this is all about. Fast forward a little bit to somebody who can really stand up in inward double. It'll look like this. You'll see that as they're coming up off the board, the arms are much longer, although they still cut in, but the push through the legs is strong, which allows them to finish above the board and come out all the way before they hit the water. Okay, now let's get to the 2.5s. When you're doing an inward 2.5 on 3 meter, it's obviously a lot easier than doing it on 1 meter, and you should definitely start on 3 meter if you want to learn it. This first person doing inward 2.5 on 3 meter doesn't have as good of a form as the person that just did inward double, and that's okay because you have plenty more space to work with. But take a look at somebody who's learning inward 2.5. It's going in a little short. Look at how much more over the board they are. It's going to feel uncomfortable when you first do it, but that's pretty good. You can see the toes to hips are slightly back, which is good. So then somebody might ask, okay, so then what are they doing wrong? If that's all pretty good form, you can see the difference in balance here compared to the people that were just doing 1.5 and double. And you'd be right, the balance is a lot better, but now there's other things to focus on after that, which we'll get into. But from a balance perspective, I want you to see how this shifts. You go from not really having control over your body line because you might not be strong enough to control the board, or you might not be able to stay over on your toes enough because it's scary or you're missing body alignment. One of the best things that you can do to fix this body alignment issue is to practice squatting with rotated hips. If you're ever in the gym and you're squatting, you want to have a flat back. Everybody knows that because you don't want to hurt your back. But in diving, you really want to have a more hollow position so that way you can stay over the board. Take a look at this video and how this guy has hollow hips as he's doing his board work. That combined with staying up on your toes will really help. After we break down this expert inward 2.5 from the balance perspective, I'm going to show you a drill that you can do to fix your balance issues. So they're oscillating, they're tall as they go up and down, and as they load the board, the arms swing backwards, their knees are right over their toes, and as they hit the bottom of the board, watch their hips. Their hips actually slide in to stay on top of the toes even longer. I always like to pretend like I was scooping my hips inward before extending into the jump. Now, an issue that can happen from that is that as you scoop inward, your shoulders could fall backwards, and that'll make you go out, and it will be hard to throw from that position. But if you can scoop your hips in while keeping your shoulders over your toes too, then you're gonna have a great takeoff. That's perfect balance right there. Check out this drill that will help you with your inward balance. What you're gonna do is go to the end of the board and you're gonna put your arms up above your head, as narrow and as tight against your ears as you possibly can. Squat down into a quarter squat, and the goal is to bounce the board without letting your upper body move. I know it looks a little bit weird, but this really helps your balance. Things to keep in mind for this are that you don't want to let your shoulders drop forward. You have to stay stacked. You have to keep your chest up, and you have to be a straight line. This video isn't perfect. You can see that this person is slightly leaned forward, but you get the idea. The second topic that we need to talk about in order to understand inward 2.5 is that throwing speed is not just force and grit, it's timing and also finesse. These people that are earlier on in their inward 2.5 journey, you can see that they're trying to shove themselves into the double and into the 2.5. It's very difficult to get a strong jump if you're forcing yourself into the dive. And this is totally natural. This is what's gonna happen to you at the beginning of learning every dive. You're gonna rush the starts, you're gonna try and get into the tuck or the pike as soon as possible, and you're gonna try and muscle it. But as you do it, you're gonna realize that you can slow it down, you can calm your body down, and still get that same energy into the throw and jump that you need, but also in a relaxed way. If you're rushing into the dive like this person, you're not gonna get good separation where the hands go and the chest and head stay up. You're gonna be doing it kind of at the same time, which you'll still get a pretty fast flip speed, but it's gonna be cut off. You'll either be low or your butt will go back and it might go out a little bit, but it's gonna happen no matter what. You can see the difference here between somebody at the beginning and somebody at the end. How much smoother it looks because they're not rushing into the flip. They're letting the extension all the way off the board happen before they go and try and get into that tuck, and it ends up a lot better. A drill that will really help you with this is to flip-flop between inward 1.5 and inward 2.5. So you'll be doing your warm-up, you'll do an inward dives, you'll do your 1.5, then you might do some doubles before you go for the inward 2.5. After you do a 2.5, go back to an inward 1.5 and really practice treating that 1.5 takeoff like it's a 2.5. It has to be strong, it has to be tall, it has to be quick, and who cares if you go over? You can pike out or kick out early, but you really just need to focus on getting the greatest takeoff you can, because that's what you want to transfer from the 1.5 to the 2.5. And by the way, you'll know you're ready for an inward 2.5 when your inward doubles look like this person. They're able to open up slightly above board level, and they have time to fully extend before they get in the water. If you're still cut off and you're finishing it low and you're just barely punching out to stand up the double, you're not going to be quite ready for inward 2.5 on 1 meter, but you should definitely do it on 3 meter. Next, I want to show you this shot from behind as a diver is doing it on 3 meter. This video really shows you the importance of a narrow throw. You can see that at the bottom of the board, the arms start to throw, but that left arm comes out really wide. Be disciplined in your throw by letting your elbows lock out completely and go right down the middle. That's super important. The things that made your inward 1.5 great and made your inward double great are the same things that will make your inward 2.5 great. Your timing on the takeoff for the throw has to be smoother and faster. The balance has to be tighter and more consistent. And like I've already said, the ankle, hip, and shoulder stack has to be better and more consistent too. The chin needs to stay up longer and have a better connection into the throw. And your air awareness needs to improve because you're going to be flipping so much faster. Start doing it now so that it becomes a habit. The last thing I need to tell you about is why you have to stay in your tuck longer for an inward than a front. And I'm gonna say it super simply. An inward is spinning forward, but you're moving backwards. So that means the forces have changed slightly. You're moving in two opposite directions. When you're doing a front, you're moving in the same direction that you're flipping, which means you can kick out and keep the momentum moving in that same direction. You'll find that inwards will kind of stop if you kick out too early, and that's because you're moving through the water like this, whereas on a front, you're moving through the water like this. This means that your timing on the out for an inward 2.5 has to be a little bit later than on a front. You have to wait for your hips to get over a little bit more before you kick out. Keep that in mind as you're doing these dives And you can practice this on the inward 1.5 and really work on that pike save, because pike saves are super important on inwards. Those are some more advanced lessons for the inward takeoffs, spotting a little bit, and hopefully some actionable drills that you can use. I really appreciate you listening to this, and as always, if you need any help, you can send me videos with the link below. Ask me any questions in the comments, and I'll be sure to get back to you. Till next time, bye.